because it is normal for our brain to start, maybe saying this is not okay, this is dangerous.
People are changed by this, whether it be that they're traumatized by the experience or whether their nervous system is impacted in other ways.
Or when it's engaged, it helps to dial down that stress response.
Said, your mitochondria is not sick when this is happening. It's doing what it's supposed to do.
And when it comes to mold illness, it is about teaching the brain to decrease its threat level to what it's perceiving in the outer environment.
So today I'm very excited because we have Dr. Cathleen King. She is the founder and CEO of Primal Trust Academy and Community. She weaves together brain retraining, vagus nerve toning, somatic movement, and trauma-informed attachment repair techniques in her online worldwide platform. Her focus is to help people with self-healing from chronic illness and trauma patterns. She personally found freedom from over a decade of debilitating health issues, including Lyme disease, chronic fatigue syndrome, mold toxicity, PTSD, and more. Dr. Kat, welcome to the summit.
Thanks, Jason, for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Hey there, sorry to jump in here, but really important. At the end of this video, there's a link that gives you access to a bonus package we put together that has all sorts of great resources. Pro-level notes, audio downloads, a fast start guide, as well as some additional resources from our speakers. You will not want to miss out on that. You can also find the link in the description below or at gotmoldsummit.com. So go claim yours today. Now back to the interview.
I'm very excited about this. I've been reading about neural retraining for a long time. I've seen a lot of the people that I've helped get much better through various techniques, including Gupta and DNRS. I was recently introduced to you through Stephen Spencer, a mutual friend, and we were both on his podcast. And he spoke about you in the most glowing terms. So after I spoke with you, I was equally impressed and wanted to include you in the summit because I feel like this is a big missing piece. People get their, I always talk about air, food, and attitude. And I think when I say that, there's something somewhat dismissive about the attitude piece. It's almost like, get it together, people, and I know it's not that simple. There's people are changed by this, whether it be that they're traumatized by the experience, or whether their nervous system is impacted in other ways, which I learned from you. And we'll talk about things like cell danger response and some of those other very eye-opening aspects of this. But before we get into what makes Primal Trust different, what specifically is neural retraining?
So that is about retraining the way that our brain associates the things that it senses both in our internal environment and our external environment. Because our brain is a meaning-making machine, it's constantly making associations, good, bad, safe, not safe. So neural retraining is the way of consciously changing the way that our brain is interpreting our world. And when it comes to mold illness, it is about teaching the brain to decrease its threat level to what it's perceiving in the outer environment so that the immune system doesn't get so overreactive to the mold that it might be exposed to. Because it is normal for our brain to start, maybe saying this is not okay, this is dangerous. And then there's this whole host of reactions that happens in the body. And the cool thing is that even though that toxin might be dangerous, we can dampen down the response that we're having to it, so we're not so uncomfortable when we do have that exposure. And that's how we use neural retraining for healing from mold.
Very cool. So this involves the limbic system, right?
Yes. The limbic system is the emotional center of the brain. You have your amygdala, which is a lot of people think of as our fear center, but it does a little bit more than that. We have our memory center, so we're constantly making making associations with our past, and our amygdala is kind of deciding, is this a threat or non-threat? And if it's a threat, it'll send a signal to our hypothalamus that sends out a stress biochemistry. We're wanting to interrupt that process so that we go from exposure to interpreting like, yes, that might not be the best thing in the world, but we don't need to send off a 5-alarm fire in our body, and we don't need to produce all of that stress biochemistry in the body. So we retrain the limbic system's way of categorizing what it's sensing internally and externally so that our biochemistry doesn't go haywire.
it sounds a lot like PTSD therapy, right? You're going back to look at go back to the crime mentally, so to speak, and then stay there long enough that you get a little discomfort, but you're not feeling that full fight or flight, and then come back and go, oh wow, I survived that. This is what I'm hearing. Is that fair?
Yeah, it is. It's teaching our brain that even though we might be sensing that substance, we're okay, and we don't need to overreact. We don't need to have all of this inflammation happening, this overreactive immune response happening, because unfortunately, if we do that, we don't detoxify it as well. And in fact, we're better off and safer staying calm in that environment that we might be sensing the threat, so that our body can metabolize and excrete it. When we go into stress, we hold things in. And so it's counterproductive to be in stress while around that thing that technically isn't optimal to be around. And so it's a little bit of, it's very counterintuitive to retrain the brain around a toxic exposure, but that's exactly what we have to do so that our body's capacity to detoxify it is optimized.
Well, it seems almost like allergy drops. My son's got a whole host of allergies, right? And all the good stuff, peanuts and dairy, eggs and dogs and cats. And so it's kind of a bummer, of course, right? He's a little kid, he loves dogs, and he wants to eat with us and everything else. So we've got these little allergy drops. His body doesn't react to them, of course, except for in a very small way, and starts to realize, oh, I can be exposed to these things and it's not so harmful. Sounds like allergy drops for the nervous system, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. And we do that through a lot of ways, through exposure, through visualization. We take the allergy drops in different ways with brain retraining.
That's very cool. So now, what is the difference between some of the other methods I mentioned earlier and Primal Trust?
Yeah. So I found in my experience that brain retraining, which is known as a top-down approach, or getting our brain to have new associations to our environment, while it's very helpful, it's not the full picture, because a lot of what's going on with chronic illness and our chronic stress response is happening in the body on an unconscious level automatically. So I found that we also need to work with the body, the autonomic nervous system, the vagus nerve, to help to also interrupt that stress response, because the body sends signals back up to the brain as well. So with Primal Trust, we're working on interrupting the signals from the brain to the body, as well as from the body to the brain. So it's a holistic approach in rerouting how we're responding to our internal and external environment. And then in addition to that, there is often a whole trauma history that goes along with this that, needs a little bit of sometimes a deeper journey of remodeling the way that we're responding because of trauma, even because of our early upbringing. It may have a lot to do with our current situation with illness. So we're doing brain retraining, we're doing somatic therapies, vagus nerve therapies, and trauma healing therapies. And I feel like that kind of creates a more holistic model to deal with these kind of situations with chronic ongoing symptoms.
So what does that look like? So if someone comes to you, what's the process?
Yeah. So there's multiple things. First of all, there's an educational process. We need to get you on board with, how does nervous system work have anything to do with this mold infection or Lyme disease or whatever? There needs to be a buy-in in order for you to do these practices. So there's an educational process about how your autonomic nervous system controls much of what you're feeling in the body. And you can actually consciously target your autonomic nervous system all the way down to the cellular level. We learn about the science of cell danger response, the science of polyvagal theory, of limbic system retraining, to get you this full understanding of how this approach is actually going to help your chronic symptoms. From there, we work on increasing your capacity to handle the stress that you're in currently, to handle the symptoms, to handle the discomfort from exposure or from infection or whatever. And we do that by first targeting the vagus nerve. We do vagus nerve toning practices, breath work, functional neurology exercises to start increasing the nervous system's capacity to go into stress and be able to come back down. We're trying to teach the nervous system how to move into some parasympathetic activity, which is our rest and digest, and get out of that sympathetic activity. So we're trying to increase your bandwidth for stress. From there, we'll move into brain retraining. And that's where we start to make new associations with those threats, the molds, the chemicals, the infections, etc., the foods, and start to calm down the overall body. And once we've gotten those things dialed in, I find that that's a good time to go deeper into the body, into somatic therapies, into trauma processing. But I find that if you go into those kind of therapies first, without having the capacity to reassociate what's happening mentally, consciously, it can be too much. And that's where we're different. We don't go right into trauma. We don't go right into somatics. We prepare the nervous system for that deeper journey. So that's kind of our approach in a nutshell.
What is somatic therapy?
Good question. It's a big buzzword these days. It's getting to be more and more popular. Somatic simply means the felt sense of the body. It's about getting into the body. Sometimes it's done through movement like yoga, tai chi, qigong. Sometimes it's done through just simply feeling what's there, which is more of a somatic experiencing approach, experiencing what the body is going through right now, its emotions, its sensations, the feeling of, wow, I'm wanting to not say no right now because I'm afraid of what they're going to do. The feeling in the body of people pleasing, the feeling in the body of being afraid of walking into a room. It's experiencing the body's response, getting an understanding and being able to consciously observe the body, meet the body, have a conscious presence of safety and trust and capacity to be with these feelings, even though another part of you might be totally freaking out at the same time. So it's a process of consciousness expansion through body awareness.
Fascinating. For those of us who are not familiar with the vagus nerve or the related nerves, tell us a little more about that.
So your vagus nerve is like your big daddy of your whole nervous system. It helps to run almost every organ in your body. It runs from the brain down into our chest, into our stomach. And it's primarily responsible for helping with the parasympathetic activity or the rest and digest system. So the vagus nerve, when it's engaged, it helps to dial down that stress response. So when you're rushing and going and, busy, when you start to slow down and breathe, we start to target the vagus nerve, and that signals, okay, let's go into parasympathetic rest and digest. And the cool thing about the vagus nerve is that you can do things to help target it or to help tone it. Much like lifting weights in the gym, you can strengthen the activity of the vagus nerve to be able to help pull you out of a stress response through breath work, through functional neurology, through cold exposure. There's a lot of things you can Google how to tone your vagus nerve on Google right now, and you'll get a whole list. And these things all help us to get out of that inflammatory response. It helps to decrease inflammation in the body when it's operating correctly. It helps us to digest our food. It helps to regulate our heart rate and our breathing. And all of that is important for chronic illness because that's how we self-heal. When we get into rest and digest, we start to detoxify. We get rid of those toxins. Our immune system starts to come back online, starts to regulate what's going on inside of us. So vagus nerve toning, to me, is one of the crucial pieces in any self-healing journey.
It's fascinating stuff. Tell me more about the cell danger response. When we spoke about that the other day, I went down the rabbit hole, and I was amazed that I had never heard about this before, considering that I've been in the space for a long time and been reading about mitochondria for quite a while. Please inform our audience about this.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure Dr. Robert Nabio, who coined this, would explain this much better than I can, but I will give you the simplistic way. And much like you, when I first studied cell danger response, so for those of you listening, if you've never heard of it, that's another thing to Google. I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is what's going on in my body. And if I can learn how to reverse this, that's going to be really important. So cell danger response is a normal response that on a cellular level we go into when we have some type of threat or injury that happens to our body. It could be a chemical threat like mold. It could be a physical threat like a broken bone. It could be a pathogenic threat like a bacteria, virus, parasite, things like that. Our cells have an automated mechanism to protect themselves from being destroyed by things, and it's called cell danger response, where a signal goes into the mitochondria that says, hey, there's a danger. And the mitochondria send a different type of signal through the cell and through the body that says we need to hunker down and protect. The cell wall will harden. We'll start to reduce what we're bringing into the cell because we don't want to bring in toxins and pathogens into a cell. So the cell wall will kind of harden up. And we'll kind of wait until danger passes. And so it's normal to go into cell danger response when we have a threat exposure. Now, the problem is when we don't come out of cell danger response. When we stay in that threat phase, we're not detoxifying well. We're not absorbing nutrients well. Our immune system can get dysregulated. And it's just this survival stage. And that's where I was stuck for over a decade with Lyme disease, mold toxicity, etc. My body couldn't absorb all of the supplements I was taking. I was basically just peeing them out. I wasn't able to detoxify, even though I was taking all of these things to detoxify. I couldn't push my body out of cell danger response, no matter what I did. And there are a lot of people out there like that, especially if you have a history of trauma, because your autonomic nervous system is primed to hunker down and protect. And that was the case for me. So what to do? Typically, we move out of that cell danger response back into thrive and to grow and make energy to run the body. And when that doesn't happen, that's because we're stuck all the way down on an autonomic nervous system level for protection. So we need to teach the body that it's safe to open up again, to let go of the toxins, to absorb nutrients and to thrive. And I found that one of the best ways to do that is by targeting your autonomic nervous system and your limbic system. And that's primarily what we're doing in our program, is we're trying to move people out of cell danger response. In fact, I have a lot of people relabel what's going on with them. You're stuck in a cell danger response, and you're going to learn how to shift out of it. It's just more empowering to me than the laundry list of diagnoses that have a common biological mechanism. So it's about looking at the body, not from a pathogenic standpoint of what infections and things do you have going on, but more of a biological terrain of what's happening in the biology that's keeping you stuck in this situation. And like I said, Robert Navio explains it much more scientifically, but that is it in a nutshell. How do we get the cells, or the mitochondria specifically, to trigger a new signal of, hey, it's safe to open up and thrive again? And he describes a voltage change that happens in the mitochondria. And I don't know what you've learned about heart-brain coherence, but our heart is responsible for a lot of our voltage of our body. And so I found that getting people into an open-hearted state of heart-brain coherence, something happens all the way down in that mitochondrial level that signals safety again. And people start to heal. And that's what I think is going on. I can't exactly say what's happening, but I know that this process works, and I think that's what's happening.
No, it makes a ton of sense. I've heard people talk about how the mitochondria respirate very, very quickly, and so as a result, they're the canaries in the call line, and they can only do one of two things: make energy or cellular defense. And so it's a switch flips, and so not only are you not making energy, but you're rallying resources for cellular defense, and so hence the fatigue. And sort of, you see this in nature with hibernation, torpor, and things like that. But with our body, it shows up in many unwelcome ways, right? In ways that don't necessarily feel like a biological imperative. But the thing that was interesting to me was one of the other researchers in this space said, your mitochondria is not sick when this is happening; it's doing what it's supposed to do.
Yeah,
which is, I think, an empowering message, right? Because especially if you have the awareness, if you can reframe it that way, which is not a reframing. You're not just being Pollyanna about it. This is a switch, and if you have the resources or the tools to be able to switch it back, and that's I think that's what's exciting about this, right?
Hey there, sorry to jump in here, but really important. At the end of this video, there's a link that gives you access to a bonus package we put together that has all sorts of great resources. Pro level notes, audio downloads, a fast start guide, as well as some additional resources from our speakers. You will not want to miss out on that. You can also find the link in the description below or at gotmoldsummit.com. So go claim yours today. Now back to the interview.
It's one thing to have, but it's another thing to have tools.
Yeah, absolutely. And the cool thing is we can switch it. We can help our mitochondria switch out of it. So, it's not lost when you're stuck there.
No, I love it. I love it. So, how did you get into this space?
From beating my head against the wall for 10 years, trying to heal from all sorts of things. I think I wasn't allowed to have something external fix me. I think that was my path. I tried everything that I could, pills, herbs, energy work, shamans, prayer, and I was just stuck in cell danger response. And the thing is, it's because deep inside of me, I had a long history of trauma. So I got into this work when one day I had that hopeless feeling that not even the smartest doctors in the world were helping me out of this. And I just needed to kind of give up and start just living my best life with my two little kids that I had because they were already missing their moms so much. And in that surrender, I remembered something very key that I had missed out on for 10 years. I was a physical therapist before I'd gotten sick, and I worked with chronic pain and a lot of the mind-body method of John Sarno, etc. And I remembered that the brain modulated pain in the body. And when I kind of let go of trying to fix myself and I just started living, I noticed a difference in my symptoms. And I'm like, maybe the brain is modulating a lot of my symptoms, and it's not just the Lyme, the mold, the parasites, the viruses that I can't get rid of. And it just like a light bulb went off. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I could do what I did with chronic pain patients, but with chronic infection, and retrain my brain and my nervous system to allow these things to exist for right now and see if my body could on its own start to process this stuff. And that's exactly what happened. And I started to heal, and I was like, oh my gosh, I've had a lot of this wisdom all along. So I had doctors that knew I was so sick, and they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, I'm doing brain retraining, functional neurology, some somatics, all this stuff from my past. And they're like, can you start working with my clients? So they just started sending me people, and I was getting them better. And then eventually it just grew. And, now I've worked with almost 10,000 people in the last few years. And we're getting great results. So that's how it happened.
Amazing. When people talk about environmental sensitivities, chronic illness, you often hear the naysayers or maybe the family members that don't really buy into it talk about psychosomatic illness, psychosoma. You make the distinction here.
Yeah, this is really important, you guys listening. And I would be someone that, if you had told me to do brain retraining a handful of years into my journey, I would have probably swore at you because I did not want it to be psychosomatic. This is not this. This is okay. You're having a real reaction to things that are actually toxic, and maybe to pathogens that are actually in your body that is not made up. And I think of this as like the first reaction and the second reaction. The first reaction is the body trying to handle the real threat. The second reaction is the brain and the body getting stuck in stress, in fear, in overwhelm because of the threat. And we're working on that second reaction, our response to the first reaction. And if you can get your brain into the state of, even though I'm having this exposure, even though I have these microbes in my body, I've got a wisdom inside of me. I lived in mold as a child, and somehow I tolerated it. And then one day I couldn't. And as you know, I was just living in mold again, and I didn't know it. I wasn't even reacting to it. So it's possible that the body can work through some of this on its own when you get your brain state and your nervous system into a state of ease, into a state of growth and repair. So it's a real issue that is handled better when you allow the body and its wisdom to take care of it. And maybe you're getting out of the environment and cleaning it up. And maybe you're taking some protocols to help. But you are living your best life. You are staying out of your danger response. You are staying out of threat mode in your own psyche. And that allows the body to self-heal easier. Does that help?
It does. And I think it's important that to make the distinction, because I think that the idea that this is all in your head keeps people from being able to move forward because they resist it.
Yeah.
And it's not all in your head. But there's a loop that is in your nervous system, not necessarily your head.
Yes.
If I'm hearing this correctly.
There's a second reaction to the first reaction. That second reaction is the loop. It's not invalidating the first reaction. Right.
It reminds me of one of my favorite quotes, which is, it's been attributed to Stephen Covey, but it's unclear who it is, but it's in between stimulus and response, there is a space. And within that space lies your power of freedom and choice. And this is really what revolves around, how you react consciously to things that are happening to you. But I think that this applies here too, right? So I often refer to it as the space between. And this is, something that when people are taking psychiatric medication, they're trying to get the space between. When they're meditating, you're finding the space between, right? When you're, when you pause before you respond to somebody who says something that you don't appreciate, the space between. And so it feels very much like that.
Exactly. And the tools are actually that. You're creating space. And in that space, maybe you're noticing the body, or maybe you're breathing, or maybe you are perceiving this moment a little differently before, like, oh no, that reaction. That's exactly it. You're building your capacity for the space between and to interrupt those signals that are constantly going from brain to body of threat.
I love it. So what ailments does this work for?
A lot of things. I feel like, honestly, these days, everybody needs nervous system retraining, because whether you're actually sick or you're in burnout or you're, irritable with your kids, this is about taking back your conscious capacity to perceive your life differently. But as far as the ailments that are most common, Lyme disease, mold toxicity, long COVID, autoimmune issues, POTS, which is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, digestive issues, chemical sensitivity, chronic pain. Those are a lot of our top ones. But generally, your autonomic nervous system is responsible for most of the issues that we tend to have. And if you can shift that autonomic functioning, I think a lot of things get better. Now, maybe it doesn't heal everything, but it can really increase your quality of life. And even if it's not touching your symptoms, affecting your brain state and your autonomic nervous system increases the way that you're consciously perceiving your life. It is possible to have joy and pleasure even when you don't feel well. And, it's not about pretending it's not there. It's about allowing space for the both and I don't feel well. And I love this moment with my kids. And something magical happens when you can hold those tensions of the opposites. And that's really what we're teaching people to do, is to develop cognitive flexibility, to hold the tensions of the opposites in their life.
I love it. So how long does it take for people to start seeing results?
Some people, it's right away. They get this awareness like, oh my gosh, I don't need to react like this. And the limbic system, for some people, will shift. Like some people with chronic fatigue, just getting this understanding, they'll have energy. For me, I definitely had shifts in the first couple of weeks where I was able to walk more. I was able to tolerate being in my house more. But it took 4 months for me to have my massive panic and anxiety disorder calm down. And it took me a year before I started being able to work again. But I've been sick for well over a decade. So we always tell people, definitely try to give it 3 to 6 months. You should definitely be seeing changes within that time. And then, you might have a journey afterwards, depending on your history of trauma and how long you've been ill.
people who go through these things tend to be marginalized by their friends and family, oftentimes isolated, either, by their choice or not. But feeling isolated, I think, is a major problem. And that reinforces this loop, right? And the data on mold and depression, Lyme and depression, it's very, very strong. And so how important is community in this, and what does Primal Trust offer in terms of?
For me, when I was going through this, I wish that I was understood by people, and I wish that I had people that I just felt like I didn't belong anywhere. And so when we created this program, Primal Trust, we created it community style. In addition, you've got things you can learn at home, but we have classes almost every day, because that co-regulation, that feeling of I'm seen, I'm heard, I'm understood. Wow, I'm not crazy. I've got these people I can practice with. It is crucial. And I think that's part of why we've been so successful. We're not just a do-it-yourself home program. We are an online, robust community. We have study groups, small cohorts, and just the ability to heal together. It's like a celebration together that's happening, and it makes the journey so much more fun, actually, to get together and elevate our brain state together.
Well, I can imagine. I mean, people do tend to feel like they're alone. They're the only ones that are going through this. Yeah. They're crazy, or they're broken, or and my experience in my journey, when I decided that I wanted to make some major lifestyle changes, specifically around alcohol use and abuse, connection and community was everything for me. And so when I look back at it now, that was probably the most important aspect. Is to have people that have been through it, and then to go through it together, and then there's this real joy in getting to the other side with people too, right?
Yeah.
And so it's whether you're running a marathon or whether you're overcoming chronic disease or some sort of whatever kind of obstacle you're facing, climbing a mountain. Doing it alone is not nearly as satisfying as doing it with others. So I see that as a very important aspect of what you're doing. So how much does it cost for someone to go through this program?
Yeah. So our platform, our courses, our live classes, our study groups, is just one fee. It's a membership fee. It's $96 a month. And you can cancel anytime. We don't have any hidden costs. I'm there teaching a couple times this week. You get access to me and all our mentoring team. That's not an extra cost. You can go through this with a one-on-one mentor, which does have an extra fee for that. But there's literally, like 30 live classes a month and hundreds of hours of videos. And, you're going to get help. You have a live forum. And so we're trying to make it as affordable as possible. And we also have a lot of free resources as well. So if that's even too much for you, I just came out with a free guide. I think it'll be part of this. The link will be here somewhere. It's called How Healing Happens. It's 127 pages, and it's like a mini program that I created mostly to get this awareness out, but also for people who can't even afford that, because I know what that's like as well. And so this guide has 5 tools: brain retraining, somatics, vagus nerve toning, and a couple of other things to get started, plus all of the science that I just talked about, the cell danger response, the polyvagal theory. So you can fully understand what's happening to your body and be able to maybe customize your own journey from there. So it's called How Healing Happens. And then a lot of free resources on YouTube and Instagram as well. But I think our community is pretty affordable. Some people come in for a couple months and they'll go through level 1, and then they'll pause, and then they'll come back and do level 2. So you can do it however you need and customize that for yourself.
That's very cool. So is this something people need to keep doing, or once they experience relief, can they just sail off into the sunset?
Yeah.
How does it work?
Question. It's both. So we have a community in our level 3 program where we continue to work on things together, like relationships, getting back to work, parenting. So once that healing, you've kind of gotten through that rough healing phase, We also have a whole support program with classes for just being in community and ongoing transformation. But other people, once they get their symptoms to the place where they're feeling great, they end the program and they go live their life and they have their own community. So we have both options for people.
Now, you've had some pretty remarkable results with Lyme disease, right?
Yeah.
You had a positive test and a negative test, and without any treatment, right?
Yeah. So, and we've seen that with a lot of people who they tested positive for Lyme and they've done the nervous system work and their body and their immune system has come back online, and then they test negative. So that's a possibility, and that's exciting to know that. We have people self-healing from all sorts of things, and you can find these stories on our YouTube channel of testimonials from things that I didn't even know this was going to help, and so it's pretty exciting.
Mast cell activation is a pretty tricky one, right? I mean, there's, I think, probably more questions than answers when it comes to that syndrome. Can you speak to that specifically?
Yeah, and I'd say a lot of our members have that, and I've seen a lot of them reverse that. Some of them with nervous system work alone, some of them with nervous system work and working with a good practitioner. And like you said, it's very tricky. I can't tell you like exactly why one method works more than another, but what I can tell you, the overall theme is I see people get their general stress response down in life. And honestly, I see that people that improve their relationships, there's something about the relationships with mast cell that I see go hand in hand. When I see people repairing their relationships with their spouse, their children, their parents, there's like a deep breath of relief in the body, and it just starts to shift. I don't know why, and but I do see that with mast cells. So I would say if that's you, working on your relationships in addition to your own nervous system is a big key there.
Well, I just interviewed Dr. Naisha Winters, who's, one of the world's leading naturopathic oncologists, and she talks about the metabolic terrain. And she specifically said, it's everything that's on us, in us, and around us. It's our food, it's our diet, lifestyle, nutrition, and our relationships. So it dovetails exactly with that. And it's not that surprising, right? When you're having difficulties with your closest relationships, it's hard to imagine really healing the rest of you, right? That this is it's inextricably connected. We have to look at these things really holistically, WHOLE, holistically.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad you brought that up. This is fascinating stuff. So, well, you mentioned that you've got the How Healing Happens ebook. That's a free bonus for our listeners. We'll make sure that everybody has access to that. Thank you so much for offering that.
Yeah.
And so where can people find you?
primaltrust.org is our website. We have Instagram, which is primaltrust_official, and YouTube, Primal Trust Official. Those are the main. We're on Facebook as well. Same thing. I think it's Primal Trust. I don't know, Dr. Cat or Primal Trust. You'll find me. But lots of free information out there, even on our website, lots of free resources there. So that would be the way to find us. We also have free discovery calls, so you can call and talk to somebody and tell them about your condition and ask if this will be helpful for you.
Well, this was truly excellent. I've been looking forward to this interview for quite some time, and I learned so much today. What I love about your work is that you not only bring hope, like I said, you also give people the tools to get better. So keep up the great work, Dr. Cat. Thanks for all you do.
Thank you.
Until next time.
Hey, before you go, in case you haven't done it already, go to gotmoldsummit.com to claim your bonus package today. It's filled with all sorts of great stuff. Audio downloads, pro level notes, fast start guide, and some additional gifts from our speakers, all absolutely free. So you won't want to miss out on that. Again, go to gotmoldsummit.com to claim your bonus package. You can also find the link in the description below.